Adjournment. Councillor Powell, seconded by Councillor Beale. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we move on to the agenda for this evening, it's a procedure that we have that we'll give 5 minutes prior to the meeting, to the official start of the council meeting. Are there any questions from the audience on tonight's agenda? And if you have any questions, please come down to the microphone and state your name and civic address. Okay. Quiet group so far. Well, I want to wish everybody welcome tonight. It's a very special evening, and staff have prepared some notes, but I'm going to ad lib before we start the December 7th regular meeting of council. 13 years ago, on a very similar night like tonight, I sat down at the council table, and Fred Manson was our CAO. And it behooves me to tell you that tonight is Fred Manson's last meeting as CAO for the city of Parksville. And the city of Parksville, the employees of the city of Parksville and the city council and the mayor of Parksville owe Mr. Manson a great deal of gratitude for bringing us to where we are at this point in time in our evolution as a small city. Fred has been an exceptional chief administrative officer. He's earned the respect of all the councils I've been on and the mayors that I've worked with. And he's leading the city through growth and change over the past 2 decades. And that hasn't been an easy task. I'll have a lot more to say at a later point in time before he leaves us for good. But tonight it's with mixed feelings that I wish him well on his retirement. In a lot of ways, I wish he wasn't going, but I understand that retirement urges come to all of us, and now is the time, I gather. So, on that note, I'm going to call on council for the adoption of the minutes of the special council meeting held November 12th, 2015. Do I have a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Beale, seconded by Councillor Powell. Any comments, any additions, deletions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. The minutes of the council meeting held November the 16th, 2015. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Greer, seconded by Councillor Beale. Any omissions, any deletions, corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. That is carried unanimously. And finally, the minutes of the special council meeting, finally, the minutes of the special council meeting held November 23rd, 2015. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Powell. Any omissions, deletions, additions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried unanimously. You've had the agenda before you for a few days now, Council. Can I get an approval of the agenda from a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Powell, seconded by Councillor Greer. No further comments. All those in favor? Thank you. That is carried unanimously. I'm going to treat tonight's agenda with regards to the larger items with the appointments of, I'll deal with them in block, so to speak. So I'll start off with the appointments of the acting mayor. You have the schedule for acting mayor from this period forward as of tomorrow until November 5th, 2018. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the acting mayor? Moved by Councillor Powell, seconded by Councillor Beale. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. We next have committee appointments. And each year at the first council meeting in December, the mayor recommends annual voting and liaison appointments to boards, commissions, and associations, and required appointments to the parcel tax review, or the parcel tax review panel. So do I have a mover and a seconder for that motion? Moved by Councillor Greer, seconded by Councillor Beale. Comments? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Okay, council appointments by the mayor. I'll read them out. Mayor Lefebvre, Councillor Greer, Councillor Oates be appointed to the Audit Committee for the period of December the 8th, 2015, up to and including December 6th, 2016 inclusive. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Powell, seconded by Councillor Beale. Seeing no comments, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. For members of the audience, this has been discussed prior to this meeting. Parcel Tax Review Panel. This includes all members of council. So do I have a mover and a seconder for the Parcel Tax Review Panel? Moved by Councillor Greer, seconded by Councillor Powell. All those in favor? The next big list is appointments to boards, commissions, and associations. And these are voting boards that members of council or myself would be appointed to. So do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendations? Moved by Councillor Powell, seconded by Councillor Beal. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried unanimously. Appointments to boards, commissions, and associations, liaisons. Do I have a mover and a seconder for these recommendations? There are several. Moved by Councillor Powell, seconded by Councillor Oates. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried unanimously. So we're now moving on to delegations. We have two delegations this evening. We have the Parksville Community and Conference Center with the 2016 annual budget and financial plan. And we have with us tonight Executive Director Margaret Spruitt and President Kirk Walper. Would you please come to the microphone? Welcome. Anytime you're ready, go right ahead.
Good evening. Thank you for having us back. We want to do a quick presentation before, just giving a little bit of background on how the center works, as there's been some questions as to how it does. The Parksville Community Center Society is a nonprofit society made up from service groups and people from the community. This is a volunteer board. We are going to go over some highlights of this, how the center works. Under the operating agreement, our mandate is to run the center as a community center. Priority bookings are given to the city, and then in the order of nonprofit community groups, private individuals, and commercial events. Operating reserve was established with the city going to pay $60,000. As you can see, the center was able to generate enough revenue to cover the 2013-2014, saving the city $40,000. We also have a full audit and give the city quarterly financial reports. Here is a breakdown of bookings at the center. Many of the rooms are rented multiple times in a day.
Councillor Powell, you have a question.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you very much. Could you tell me what GOA bar is at the bar, RCM, kitchen, SSCT, what the initials stand for?
Yes, those are the abbreviations for the meeting rooms. Gary Oaks Arbutus, the bar, Red Cedar Maples, the Seaside Chrysler Theater, and EF is entire facility. As you can see, we've had many different groups. In April, the Legion held a 5-day conference with 300 members. This was definitely a boost for the community. We worked for 3 years to secure this booking. Upgrades to our website allow people to do inquiries online. We have been marketing weddings and are starting to see a positive result. Many of these bookings are multi-day bookings. Some of them are as far away as from Prince George. We are also attracting bands and concerts. The revenue totals does not include repeat bookings. We had 359 days with bookings in the center. The total amount of groups was 485. The nonprofit community groups was 367, and commercial was 195. As the center is getting busier, we have started planning in 2016 to expand our staff corps. Here are some improvements for the center which society has done to make the center a more viable for rentals. The Parksville Community Center Society works very hard to maintain this facility, making sure we can serve the community's needs. Thank you for your time.
Do members of council have any questions for the delegation regarding this presentation? Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to go to the finances that you provided in your report. I have quite a few questions, so how would you like to do this, Your Worship?
Why don't you start off by asking 2 or 3 questions, then we'll move on to others and come back to you.
Okay, I just want to bring your attention to the, the income for the year. And we have budgeted in 2013, you budgeted 12,600, and your actual was 6,884. Your budget was 12,000 in 2014, you got 10,390. 2015, you budgeted 12,600. To date, you received 6,515, and that's just for the Chrysler rental room. And as well, you'll see the same sort of circumstances with the Lions Bar, with the Jerry Oaks, with the Rotary Kitchen rentals. And so my question to you is, why do you keep over budgeting the amount when you're always earning less? Wouldn't it be more appropriate to put the amount that is more appropriate to what you're receiving every year?
What this budget, what the totals you have is to the third quarter, which is at the end of September. A lot of our major bookings are in October, November, December. So we do make up the difference in what we're predicting.
Okay, if you go back to actuals and budgeted for the previous year, 2013 for the Jerry Oaks, you budgeted 30,000, you made 23,000. In 2014, you budgeted 31,000, you budgeted and you received 21,000. In 2015, you budgeted 23,000 and you're in receipt of 13,770. And so that's, 11,000. Did I lose? No, I'm on the right one. So the question I have is, if they keep going down, if the numbers keep going down and you're not getting what you expected to get, wouldn't it make more sense to lower your budget outcomes instead of increasing them year after year? Because we haven't met a lot of the budgeted amounts through the years. And to me, that sort of skews how well we're doing or how well we're not doing. And I noticed the same situation in the expenses. The net income, back to net incomes. You budgeted for net catering 16,000, you only got 9. You already budgeted 16,000 for 2014, you only got 84. You budgeted 966.5 for 2015, you got 5,000. You budgeted 96.5 again. So what I see is a bunch of overestimating in the budgets. And so to me, this isn't a really accurate, it isn't accurate as far as a budget goes or actuals. And so I'm wondering, how did you go about making the budget amounts?
Okay, what we do is when we when we sit down to do it, we take where we're at and we look at what is coming into the center, and we do. Unfortunately, catering, I can budget, but if there's, for example, Island Health, books, rooms, we do coffee service, we do light lunches for them, but if they have a cutback in their budget, which says no more coffee service, we've anticipated that we did. So we have been adjusting it. It isn't 100%, but as far as most of them, we do look at where we're at, and we say, okay, this is where we're at, where were we last year, and we put a percentage from there on. But we do count what we have on our books as coming up into the budget as well.
If we go into expenses, you've got amortization expense, and for 2013 you've got $22,924, and if you look at 2014, the amortization amount is missing from the audited financial statement, which should be $22,579. So that's missing out of this. In computer system maintenance, you've budgeted $1,590, you spent $773. You budgeted $1,638, you've spent $178. Again, you budgeted $1,638, you haven't spent anything, and now you've got another $1,638 for next year. And so I'm concerned that you're overestimating the expenses, and you're not always overestimating the expenses, but you are overestimating some, and so it's not really a true picture of where we are financially. And these are taxpayer dollars, and the city is accountable to that. And we have a contract with the board, and what we expect is to have, this should have been presented to us a week ago or 2 weeks ago when you were last here, and now that we have it, I've gone over this, and there's a lot of questions I have. The membership dues, $425, it was $307. $437, it was $304. $400, $290. And so why don't you make it 300, around 300 instead of 400? Like, it's a pretty simple question. Office supplies, they're not bad. You've got the professional development incentives. You budgeted $27.5 for that. You spent $147 in 2013. You budgeted $28.32 for that in 2014, and you spent $34, which was great. You overspent it. Then you're budgeted $28, and you've only spent $449 this year, and now you've increased it to $3,500. And so, what's the rationale for that? If you're not spending the amount that you budgeted, why increase it?
With the professional development, that is our staff one for training, and I am anticipating that there will be more training with the ones wanting to take courses. And we also use that one, professional development, for different things that we do in the community, and we've actually have spent money in that one. You guys just don't see it right now, but that's the reason that we increased that one, was because last year there was several staff members who did go for training, and it gobbled it right up. So, and they have indicated they want to go for courses. I have to let my staff in better their self.
I agree with you, but I think that it doesn't look appropriate to keep raising it when you haven't spent that much. The next one is the staff travel. You've got $2,100. You spent $929. You had just $2,060. You spent $1,341. You again budgeted $2,060. You've only spent $544, and then you're going to go $2,000 the next year. To me, it just doesn't hold the weight of increasing that or maintaining that if you're not spending it year after year.
Okay, Councillor Powell, I'm going to ask any other members of council if they have questions, and I'll come back to you if you're not finished. Members of council, any questions for the delegation? Councillor Beale.
Thank you, Worship. Some of the questions, some things I was wondering about have been raised by Councillor Powell, but I was curious just to fully understand the documents that you sent along. There is, in our book it says page 31 of 136, but it's Appendix 3 that was received some time ago, or actually I'm not sure So it was received. And I'm just curious about it. The title is Budget Capital Expenditures, and it lists, there's a list of required items. And I was just curious about the time period. Like, is this as of now, these things are still these are needed and planned for going forward? I see that you've got it spread over the years from 2014 to 2020, and much of it is sort of clear to me, but I noticed that with kitchen equipment, it indicates that you need $10,000 for required items, and then in 2015 the budget is for $20,000. So I'm just not sure how that changed from $10,000 to $20,000. So I wondered if I was missing something in terms of that time frame.
No, you're correct. We did increase the amount of the kitchen because we were getting a lot of complaints from renters that our kitchen doesn't have the proper equipment. To do it properly, we did have to bring it up to $20,000 because we have to have cabinets, number one, for things to be locked up. We have to have the proper equipment, the baking, the pots, the pans. We just don't have them right now. It's something that we have to do.
Thank you for that clarification. So in fact, that those descriptions could use a little bit of revision. Is that correct? That's my understanding.
Yes.
I also had a question about. No, I'll let someone else speak. I had also noticed that the amortization amount wasn't listed, but once I added that in, the total there was a little closer to the budget that's laid out for 2016.
Any other members of council? Councillor Oates.
Yes, thank you very much. Your PowerPoint presentation, I think it was the second last page, the improvements for the center.
Yes.
Those the list of the different things that the center paid for. Is that in what time period does that capture?
That basically captures right from when we took the running of the center.
Okay, so in effect this is a summation of the improvements that you've made since the society has been there.
Yes, we have made others, but of course they're smaller, so you're not going to take your guys' time by trying to itemize each list.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members of council have any questions for the delegation? Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Your Worship. On the information you gave us tonight for the budget for 2016, you've got under administrative wage budgets. These are new hires that you're hiring, is that right?
As you can see, there will be one new part-time, yes, to be hired, and one new part-time both in administration and in janitorial.
So how much does that come to for the year?
About $24,000 each.
That's it for now. Thanks.
Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to go to total other expenses, fire alarm systems. We've kept pretty even, about $1,700, $1,600, and then all of a sudden $34.86. So how come that was such a big jump for that? It doesn't have a page number. Yeah.
Every 5 years, we have to get all of our fire extinguishers, all of our equipment has to be retested, batteries, things like that, so that's why there is such a jump.
And so the $1,900 for this year, you're going to take out for next year?
No, actually, it will be, there is always, when we have the major replacements and thing, we have to pay for all the batteries, the different things. It's one of those things that they told me, the company told me to plan for, is added expense, because there will be added expense.
Okay, and so this year it looks like you were doing that added expense for $3,486, and then next year you have a $4,000 budget. So do you have to do more of that next year?
Yes, actually we've had to replace a lot of our emergency lighting and things because they were dated, and they're telling us that we have to have that extra in there because they need to be replaced. The batteries last for, as I said, about 5 years, and then they have to be replaced. We replaced some, but there's still some that are an issue.
Okay, and then the repairs and maintenance of the building, 20,000 you budgeted. You spent 16,500, 21,000, 17,300, 21,000, 14, and you're going to budget 21,000 again?
We're actually almost at 20,000 or a little bit more because we did have some major repairs this year. We had an issue with the plumbing. We had a pipe break in the back, and it was really messy. And we've had to have that repaired. And because the city only covers it up to a certain amount, it has pushed what we usually spend. We are going to be quite close, or a little bit over, actually, by the end of the year.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions from members of council? I have a few comments I'd like to make, and thank you for these explanations. It's very, very helpful. What concerns me about the Parksville Community and Conference Center is that it's a large building. It's an asset and being that belongs to the city, and the cost of the building, the budget building expenses, which I'm glad you've broken down separately, just to operate and maintain the building, is roughly $213,000 a year. That represents, when you total everything up, that represents about what, 50% of the cost of running the whole conference center?
Yes.
That's correct, 50%. Over time, we're going to be faced with capital costs because in the contract we have anything over $5,000, which is capital, would be paid for by the city.
Yes.
Okay. So that's the kind of situation that leads me to say that if we're going to have a conference center, we need the building, and the building has to be in good operational shape, and over time that's going to cost us a lot of money. So my comment is that it becomes very important that we generate as much revenue as we can. I'm thinking about, I had a talk with Mr. Walper about 2 weeks ago, and I was thinking that at some point in time, a reasonable objective would be, it's not going to be obligatory that it be met, but at some point in time, that at least the revenues that we generate would equate to the budget building expenses, because those kinds of things become very important. Otherwise, it all falls on the taxpayer. The taxpayer is going to have to foot the bill. And there's no doubt that the building is being used, and it's being used by a lot of groups. I see where weddings seem to be the biggest payoffs. So
Yes.
Maybe you could market more and more weddings. But that being said, I think that we have to remember, we as council and the taxpayers of the city have to remember that it's an asset and being that must be maintained at all times in order to remain functional, in order to provide the services that a community and conference center must provide. So I'll leave that thought with you for the time being. Any further questions from members of council? Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I know the importance of the community center. It's vital for the community and all the activities that go on. I too had a talk to Mr. Walper a couple of weeks ago, and we went over some ideas, and I think we came along with some positive thoughts on how we might be able to make some changes. I think what this area is all about is public relations, just good public relations, marketing, and I think that is what's needed probably more than anything. I know it's a difficult operation, but it is important that we come in with some kind of an idea to save some money rather than keep spending more and more every year on taxpayers' dollars. My suggestion was, and it was only a suggestion, that maybe you have some better plans for next year, maybe a business plan, marketing plans, and try to come in at a 25% discount in the subsidy for 2016. And I see this as very viable. It's not a lot, but I think we have to strive for some goals to be accomplished so that we don't keep increasing the amount for the taxpayers. 25% reduction seems very viable to me. So I don't know what that'll include, but all I can say is that, I'll approve this budget. I have no trouble with that. We have to do that this year. but hopefully next year with a good plan in place and some kind of excellent marketing and so on, that we can come in with a less subsidy, and I think the taxpayers would be happy about that. I represent quite a number of taxpayers, and I know I've talked to them about the convention center, and most of them are pretty irate that we have to subsidize it to the amount we do. So I think we have to strive to do somewhat better. Anyways, good luck on that.
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Walper.
Just to speak on behalf of the board of directors, and we oversee the operations and the activities and receive monthly reports. One thing that we look at moving forward is, and we question ongoing, is the first mandate as a community center to serve the community. And are we doing that to the highest ability, which we are? Now, if we move from a focus of community center to one of a profit-generating conference center, then the challenge that we face, because we already have very high utilization of the center, we have a lot of different user groups that are using it. So as we change from a focus from community center to conference center in an effort to increase revenues, then what we run the risk of is squeezing out the nonprofit community users and replacing those with paying for, more commercial. So that's one of the challenges that we have, and we look at it and we say, well, without question, the center is being utilized at a very high level. Not all of those users are paying the rate that would drive revenue. So, we can work together on that, but that is one of the challenges that we face as a board when we look at this and we look at the budget. And comparing with other, similar centers, whether it be across the province, it's been hard to find any that operate at a profit or what model they're using without excluding one group in favor of another, and that would involve, I think, changing our mandate.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you and the volunteer board, because you do a great job, and I understand the pickle that you're in. On the one hand, it's a community center, and community groups, including the city, tend to get priority. That having been said, I don't think that in my comments about breaking even, I don't think that we etch that in stone, say you must break even. But I think it's something worthwhile aiming for, and it's something that, we should sit down and talk about how that might be achieved, and within some groups. Yeah. Councillor Greer.
Yeah. Thank you, Your Worship. I just wondering, you put the prices, I believe, up a couple of years ago, was it? 2 or 3 years ago? I'm just wondering when that happened.
It was about 5 years.
5 years ago.
And we are in line with what is the rentals
Right.
for the centers in the area.
Because I know at that time you lost quite a number of people who were renting. And I'm wondering if the price was a little less and worked more on volume, would that be better? Do you think price has been a big problem?
No, price has not been a big problem, no. And especially we actually have picked up a lot from Qualicum Beach. We have groups that left Qualicum Beach and they're with us.
You're comparable in price with them?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Beal.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to thank Mr. Walper for those added statements. That's certainly a concern of mine as well, that it's important, if it's a community center, that it be used by the community, and if we've got really good usage, then that's good value as well. Prior to this evening's presentation, we just have the financial information, and it did not reflect any of those other numbers. So thank you for bringing those along.
And finally, for me, I'm going to suggest from Councillor Oates, who's going to talk in a moment, that we sit down and look at the agreement in terms of those kinds of where there appears to be sort of a dichotomy in terms of being a community center versus a conference center. Councillor Oates.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move approval of the Parksville Conference Center budget as presented.
I have a seconder for that, Councillor Greer. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. That is carried. Thank you very much. Pardon me. You opposed? Okay, well, that's still a majority, so it passes. Thank you again. Thanks once again for coming, for the good work that you do.
Your Worship, Mayor Lefebvre and council members, and also Mr. Fred Manson and staff. Okay, thank you. I'm here to present to you this petition to assure us that sidewalks and complete infrastructure be installed as per our bylaws number 1235. Final approval will require the developer to meet our bylaw number 1235, which states the owner of land shall provide works and service including sidewalks on the entire length of all highways immediately adjacent to the land and up to the center line of the highways prior to the issuance of a building permit. I know I'm ahead of the game here because final approval hasn't come yet, but I just want council to know that the preliminary approval went through, and I don't know if a letter of approval, for preliminary letter of approval was sent, but there are quite a few shortcomings. It's our sincere wish for the sake of pedestrian safety and subdivision continuity that the development will provide this local community with sidewalks and services immediately adjacent to and on the entire length of the highways of 511 Soriel Road subdivision. Oh, I lost my place. Okay. All right. Might as well do the... Okay. Up on the screen, I'm saying that the preliminary drawings do not show any sidewalks on the development, and also that there's incomplete services at the east end of Soriel Road. This is the drawing provided by Timberlake Jones, which does not show any sidewalks on Temple Street. There are no sidewalks the entire length of Soriel Road, and there is no sidewalks on Willow Street, which is going to be cutting into the property. The developer's preliminary approval drawing A274-01-P1 Revision A does not provide any sidewalks. Adjacent to the development along all highways, Temple, Soriel, and Willow. Furthermore, intention is to not provide full infrastructure from Willow down to the waterfront. So this is where Willow is right here, and the waterfront is over here. Now these properties, well, we'll go into the next one. How does this work? Next. Okay, covered that. On June the 19th, 2015, I received from Parksville Engineering the following standards and specifications for sidewalks and walkways. The subdivider shall provide sidewalks within the lands being subdivided in accordance with the standards as set out herewith. Bylaw 1235, works and services. This is the definition and interpretation is as follows. Means those highways, water, sewage, disposal, or storm drainage systems, street lighting, and sidewalks, underground utilities, or other works and services set out in the city's engineering standards and specifications and forming part of the current subdivision control bylaw. Okay. Whoops. I don't know how I can go back on this. Anyway, I'll read it out anyway. Bylaw 1235, requirements to provide works and services. Item 2, an owner of land shall, to the extent that the works and service has not been previously provided, or to the extent that the existing works and services do not meet the standards set out in the current engineering standards and specifications forming part of that subdivision control bylaw, provide all works and services directly attributable to the development on the entire length of all highways immediately adjacent to the land up to the center line of the highway prior to the issuance of a building permit. Just skipping ahead here because I missed a few things. There we go. Okay. For pedestrian safety, sidewalks will be required for the 2 lots facing Temple Street and the entire length of Soriel Road from Temple Street to the waterfront, and for the 2 lots facing the new Willow Road to allow for connection to lands and systems beyond the proposed development. Many families view fireworks held at Parksville Bay from the water end of Soriel Road. When they are over, these families are forced to find their way back to Willow Street in the dark while cars and trucks are dodging by them in the dark. Also, residents take in the wonderful views that are available at the end of Soriel Road. Many residents use Soriel Road as part of their daily walk route. People walking their dogs, mothers pushing strollers, older residents using walkers, canes, and riders. And when new residents for this subdivision go to collect their mail, they'll be forced to walk on the road instead of a proper sidewalk. The main residence of this subdivision is presently on septic. Sewer hookup is mandatory. Bringing the sewers down to the end of Soriel Road will allow other residents to hook up as well. The Soriel Road from Willow Street to the waterfront is rough seal coat pavement, which is not asphalt, as is required when developing. Soriel Road from Willow Street to the waterfront requires proper lighting for pedestrian safety and also as a deterrent to use this dark end of the street for activities other than sightseeing. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Vespasian. Do any members of council have comments or questions for Mr. Vespasian? Votes.
Just a couple of slides back there was a statement made. I'm wondering if that's, I'm just wondering where that came from.
Okay.
A couple of slides back there where you talk about the requirement. No.
Okay.
No.
You just let me know.
No.
Okay.
There you go. Where'd that come from?
Okay. The 2 lots facing Temple Street, for example.
No. You're misunderstanding.
Oh.
You're saying they will be required. Says who?
Says me.
Okay.
Okay. Why?
That's a fairly straightforward answer.
Why would you ask, says who's asking for it?
Because it seems that much of your presentations, it almost seems to me that the allegation is that the bylaws are not being followed. And so I'd be concerned if we have bylaws that are not being followed. I'd be very concerned about that. And I'd be very concerned where there are requirements and we're not doing those things. But I think that council will have to get a briefing on whether or not the bylaws are being followed from the city's perspective. And that's why I asked about that there. Yes, it's important.
Yes.
Whether or not it's a bylaw or whether it's an opinion, it's very important to me.
Yeah, no, these are coming from a bylaw. And that, not a quote, no. What are you referring to?
Mr. Vespasian, in your petition, I just want to clarify the wording. We request that the city bylaws for subdivision be followed and carried out to include sidewalks on all road fronts of the development. You're talking about sidewalks on both sides of the road?
I'm talking about the way the bylaw 1235 reads, that from the center of the road back on the adjacent property where the development is happening, they are supposed to provide all the utilities, all the services, all the sidewalks, all the lighting, all the things that are required.
So looking at the construction that's going on now on Soriel, beyond Temple, down towards the water, you're asking for, because there are sidewalks on one side of the road. It's not a full, it hasn't been completed to Temple, but there is a sidewalk there. So I want to be clear, you're asking for sidewalks on both sides of the road?
No, because what's on there on our side of the road already amounts to 380 feet. The Soriel Road development is 1,350 feet, which doesn't come close to, and it wouldn't cover the fact that people go down to the waterfront, to the bluff, enjoy the view, see the fireworks, people just strolling. They're all doing this on the road, and the same goes for the new homes that are going to be built there. The mailboxes on that side of the road, if people are going to be parking cars on those roads, if they have children or whatever, those people will have to walk on the road in order to get there. So according to 1235, why not do it? It's supposed to be
Okay.
done. Yeah.
Thanks very much, and thanks for the petition. We'll take that to the office. Councillor Oates, do I detect that you want to make a motion to refer this to staff, or you talked about the fact that it was that you weren't sure that the bylaw was being questioned, and I'm just throwing it out there.
I think that, I move that this should be referred to staff to prepare a report for council. Specifically, I would like to that report to outline the requirements of the bylaw with respect to the development on that street and what is being done to qualify to ensure that that bylaw is being met.
Is that clear enough, Mr. Manson, Mrs. Gomez?
Yes, it is, Your Worship. Staff will prepare the report accordingly, but for the benefit of council and the audience, the bylaws that we have are in fact being followed to the exact letter of the law. There is some interpretation with regards to this. The Works and Services bylaw does require all utilities, etc., to be constructed to the center line of a road in accordance with engineering standards. The engineering standard for a residential road is sidewalk on one side. Along Temple, or not Temple, Soriel, there is already sidewalk on one side adjacent to the portion of the property that is being developed. It was stated that the whole property is something like 1,100 feet long. That's correct. But only the portion between Temple and Willow is actually being developed. So that's the only part that is affected by the Works and Services bylaw. Willow Street, yes, there will be sidewalk on the one side of Willow Street. In this case, it will be the portion directly adjacent to the properties that are being developed. The rest of Soriel from Willow east to the water, because that portion of the adjacent property is not being developed, there is no requirement for the owner to do anything on that section of the road. If council so choose to do something, that would have to be done out of the general revenues of the city.
Can I have a seconder for Councillor Oates? I have a seconder with Councillor Patterson. Any further discussion on the motion?
Can I say something?
Councillor Patterson?
Can I say something?
Sure, go ahead.
The 511 subdivision is 5 acres. The 11 lots that are being severed come to a little over 2.5 acres. That leaves the rest of the property as a 12th property. It's the entire property that's being developed here. It's not just the 11 lots that he's severing off. If anybody wants to sever a lot off their property, they don't just have to put the services on the front of that lot they're severing. They have to do it on the existing place as well. So I'm sorry, Mr. Manson, I disagree with you that I believe that the residence is part of the development.
Okay, on that note, I have a mover and a seconder. Any further discussion? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through our CAO to probably Mr. Russell, can you let me know where we are in the process of this subdivision?
If Mayor Worship, through to Councillor Patterson, the subdivision has preliminary layout approval. That means if they follow the list of instructions in preliminary layout, that approval would have to be granted.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to call the vote on the motion, which is moved by Councillor Oates and seconded by Councillor Patterson. All those in favour? Thank you. That is carried. Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Verspeten.
Thank you, Your Worship.
We'll get back to you on that. Okay. Okay, moving along. Council, we have one piece of correspondence tonight. It's from Ducks Unlimited, and we need a mover and a seconder that the request for funding be received. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Powell, seconded by Councillor Greer. Any discussion on this particular motion? Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just wondering whether we had given this organization money last year and the year previous. I remember them coming, but I can't remember whether we gave them any money.
I don't recall either. I don't think so.
I don't think we did give them any money.
If I may, Your Worship, to the best of my knowledge, no, we haven't provided Ducks Unlimited with funding in the past.
The recommendation is simply to receive. So let me get a mover and a seconder simply to receive. So do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Beale, Councillor Patterson? Okay, questions or discussion? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have any issues at all that they've asked Ducks Unlimited for a gift and that, but we do have a grant-in-aid program, and I think that would be and I realize that because I just finished it, but to send a letter that we would prefer them to apply more as a grant-in-aid rather than a gift from the city. Does that make sense to the rest of council?
Councillor Beale.
Just a follow-up question to Councillor Patterson's suggestion. Correct me if I'm wrong, but don't grants in need have residency requirements? And this is an organization that spans a larger area, so I'm not sure that would be the best fit. I must say I was quite intrigued and heartened to see that they are planning to spend over the next 20 years, mind you, but $22 million on the east coast of Vancouver Island. Be curious to know a little more about their plans to assist with wetland restoration and preservation.
Follow-up?
Follow-up. Because I just sat on the grant-in-aid and went through a lot of the different requests. There are some that do not actually reside in, like have a physical address and that, so, which is why they weren't approved.
I know the Ducks Unlimited is it's a provincial-wide organization, and I think it's a national organization too, but they're governed provincially in each province. Yes, Councillor Beale.
One further comment. I do understand that they provide some support to at least one and likely more of our local organizations that are working on preserving wetland environments.
Okay, are we ready to call the vote for the letter to be received? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. Okay. Now we're into reports. Mr. Butterworth, would you please give us a background on the issue regarding the 2015-2019? And I guess Mr. Butterworth is not here. I saw him earlier today. I thought he was coming tonight. So, Ms. Lovegrove, would you please give us the background on the issue regarding the 2015-2019 amended financial plan?
Thank you, Your Worship. In August of 2015, we did bring an amended financial plan to Council with items that had come to our attention at that time that had differed from the approval of the final budget that was approved in May of 2015. Since the August approval, there has again been more items that have come to our attention that need to be included in the 2015 budget in order for us to comply with the community charter. And we're asking Council to review those items and give it consideration for approval. Thank you.
Okay, do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Beals, seconded by, do I have a seconder? Councillor Greer. Discussion on the amended financial plan 2015-2019. Pretty straightforward stuff. Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Next report we have is regarding the renewal of the Regional Emergency Management Agreement. Chief Banks, would you please give us the background on this issue?
Yes, Your Worship. As noted in the report, this is a renewal of the Regional Emergency Management Agreement. This agreement has been in place since 2001 and is up for renewal. It's actually past due for renewal. This agreement basically outlines how we'll operate cooperatively with the other local jurisdictions in the area in the event of a large-scale disaster or emergency. And the recommendation is as per the report.
Moved by Councillor Greer, seconded by, do I have a seconder? Councillor Beal. Any discussion on the recommendation? Again, fairly straightforward, working with the First Nations in District 69 for a 5-year period. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. Mr. Manson, for one of the last few times, would you give us the background on the issue of the Parksville District Chamber of Commerce 2016 Fee-for-Services Agreement?
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a renewal of the fee-for-service agreement that we have with the Chamber. I'm not sure when it started, many years ago. It's essentially exactly the same as what was provided in 2015, with the exception a small reduction in hours, changing it from 2015 to 2016, and then an increase in accordance with the Consumer Price Index for BC from October to October. And the recommendation is as per the agenda.
Okay, we've all read the recommendation. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Powell, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. That is carried. I see Mr. Burden sitting in the audience, and he's whispering to himself, it's not enough. But that's the way it goes. Mr. Manson, no, I'm sorry, Mr. Manson. I'll come back to you later.
Again.
Mrs. Comas, we need the background on the Springwood Park concession agreement.
No, you missed one.
Pardon me, did I miss one?
Community Center.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't want to see you go so soon, Mr. Manson. So would you please give us the background on the issue regarding the Parksville Community and Conference Center operating agreement renewal?
Thank you, Your Worship. This one is for the renewal of the operating agreement with Parksville Conference Center Society, who have been operating the Parksville Community and Conference Center since 2003. It has been renewed several times in the past. The renewal that we're proposing right now is essentially the same as the previous one, with the exception of the items that are outlined on page 82 of the agenda. Section 14 would allow up to 2 years advance booking from the old one of 1. Section 17 increases the terms from 3 to 5 years. Sections 21, 24, and 25, the budget dates are changed to more closely reflect reality. Section 24 takes out the 2013 and 14 language to create the operating reserve. Section 29 changes to provide for the continuation of the capital expenditure reserve, and Section 30 to remove the actual requirement for uses of hours because we have other means of receiving them, and the recommendation is as per the agenda.
This is where, somebody close the door, please. There's a conversation going on out there. This concession agreement is where?
Community center.
Pardon me?
The community center.
I'm sorry. I keep moving ahead on you, Mr. Manson. I don't want it to end, but it's going to end. But this doesn't interfere with the fact that we can review the. We don't have to do anything about that. Councillor Rhodes can set that up for us to talk about the operating agreement. Okay, thank you.
In essence, in regards to that, this does establish the policy as you were discussing, whether or not this is a community center versus a conference center, but you still have the option to amend it as you see fit.
Okay. Am I saying thank you for the last time?
I don't know, are you?
I guess there's no other items on the agenda here. Pretty momentous. Getting choked up here. Okay. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the three recommendations? Moved by Councillor Oates, seconded by. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Greer. Any further discussion? Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to change it to read 1 year for a period ending December 31st, 2016. An amendment I would like to make.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Patterson? Okay. Discussion on that motion. Councillor Greer.
I was about to make a motion to keep it at 3 years until we're finished our mandate. I'm not so sure whether we want to lag it into another council and maybe another mayor after our term is up. So I don't know whether 1 year would be of any benefit, but I think 3 years at least we finish our term. Thanks.
Any further discussion? Yes, Councillor Beal.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to support the motion that the amendment for 1 year. I think that given that we're going to be sitting down together, the Royal We, and looking at what the plans are looking ahead, this gives us time to do that and perhaps make some adjustments while still understanding that it is possible to make changes. I understand that, but setting it up for 1 year I think might be prudent at this time.
Interesting. Any further comments? Councillor Oates.
I'm not understanding what the difference between 1 year or 3 years is. I understand the difference between 3 and 5. Councillor Greer brings up a good point, imposing our mandate on another council. The agreement does have a 90-day ability for 90 days notice. Either party can get out of it. A 1 year deal is not much stability to give to the board. They only have an operating agreement for 1 year. If we want to give them the ability to be successful, I think we should give them a little longer term than a 1 year term. They've been used to a 3 year term. That's what we've done before. It's worked well. We have the ability to get out of it if we can. So I don't support going to 1 year.
Any further comments? Mr. Manson.
If I may, Your Worship, the amended or the motion that's being discussed has not been seconded.
Yes, it has. It was seconded by Councillor Patterson.
That was the original one, not. Okay.
This is the 1 year. Motion made by Councillor Powell, seconded by Councillor Patterson. And that will be the motion to vote. Okay. We're okay? All right. So on the motion for the 1 year, are we ready to vote on that? All those in favor? Opposed? Well, that's going to die on the vine. It's tied, so it doesn't pass. Yes, Councillor Powell.
I'd like to make a motion to table it until we have a discussion with the board.
Mr. Mattson?
Council may if you wish, but it's non-debatable. If it's seconded, it's non-debatable.
Will it be seconded by Councillor Patterson? So we're moving on. Okay, so we'll have to have that discussion amongst ourselves sooner than later.
You have to ask the question.
You have to vote on it? Okay, all those in favor of tabling it? Carry. Okay, it carries. All right. So we can set that up at your council liaison. We can set that up at your pleasure to have a meeting on that. Thank you. Okay, now we're moving on to the Springwood Park concession agreement. My goodness, I thought I'd never get there. Okay, Mrs. Comas, would you please give us the background on this issue?
Yes, Your Worship. The Parksville Royals Baseball Club has had a contract for operation of the Springwood Park concession since 1997, and this is a standard renewal agreement. The only change between previous years is recommendation 2E, that the club to allow user groups of Springwood Park access to the concession facility in accordance with the proposed license to use is attached to this report. It has been past practice for the baseball team to allow other users of the park to run the concession when the baseball team isn't using it. However, the baseball team has rightly realized that they are faced with the liability of whatever happens to that concession when somebody else is using it. So they have had legal advice create an agreement for users to carry the same amount of insurance that they are required to carry and to maintain the concession in the same condition that they are required to maintain it. They're not charging any fees for it, but they are sharing the liability and responsibility for the concession with other users.
And I gather over the years that this has worked out quite well for everybody from reading the reports. Okay, do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendations? Moved by Councillor Powell, seconded by Councillor Greer. Any further comments, questions on the recommendations on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you, that is carried. Mrs. Comas, you have just planned our entire year of 2016. Would you please give us the background on this issue?
Yes, Your Worship. This is a standard report that we are required to bring forward in each year under the provisions of the Community Charter to establish council and committee meeting dates for 2016. The only two regular council meeting dates are recommended not to be scheduled are January 4th and December 19th of 2016 due to the Christmas and New Year's season.
Moved by Councillor Greer, seconded by Councillor Powell. Any discussions on this particular item? Your year is now planned, Council. Write it down and take note. All those in favor? Thank you. That is carried. Okay, the 2015 Assent Voting Opportunity official results. Mrs. Weeks, would you please come to the microphone and give us the background on this issue?
Yes. So the Local Government Act requires the Chief Election Officer to submit a report of the results to the local government within 30 days after the declaration of the official results. So as required under the Act, the assent voting results are attached to the report, and the recommendation is as per the agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Greer, seconded by Councillor Beale. This is simply to be received, so unless there's no questions, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Okay, Council, we're moving on to bylaws. We have 3 readings on the first bylaw, the 5-year financial plan amendment bylaw 2015 to 2019, number 1517.2. Mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Powell, seconded by Councillor Greer. Any questions? All those in favor? Thank you. That is carried. Bylaw for third reading. the Planned Parksville Amendment Bylaw 2015, 1492.2, and Zoning and Development Amendment Bylaw 2015, number 2000.101. Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Powell, seconded by Councillor Greer. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you, and that is carried. For final adoption, the loan authorization ERWS Bylaw 2015, number 1519. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Powell. All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Greer, Councillor.
Yes, Your Worship. As I was reading through my package, I noticed, I just need some clarity. The assent voting question was to borrow 5.6, and this document says is not to exceed 6.5.
I think we've had that typo before. Is that a typo?
Because that's 1.1 million.
Yeah,
that's a pretty big.
That's a typo. We did it. We made that mistake before. Yeah, good eye. Good. I didn't notice it.
Can I get my flowers next year?
Go ahead, Councillor.
So under bylaw 1519, point number 3, it should be the 6 and the 5 should be
Reversed.
transposed.
Yes, Your Worship. Yes. The assent voting opportunity was for 5.6 million. That is all council is legally permitted to borrow.
That was what the okay. I had a mover and a seconder, didn't I? Yes, I did. Mrs. Comas, I had a mover and a seconder. Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried unanimously. All right, we've reached that stage in the meeting where we're on to new business, and I'm going to go around the table. New business. Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Your Worship. You probably, Council, received the same email as I did, but there's a new change at the museum. It's now called the Parksville Museum. Currently, apparently, there's 6 signs with different names on them, so they want to get it down to one sign, which will read Parksville Museum. The operation will still be called the Parksville and District Historical Society. So they're just changing the name to publicize, which will be Parksville Museum.
Thank you. And as the new council liaison, you all the best. We're looking to hear from reports from you, and we'll all be looking forward to that meeting that we're having on January the 9th, I believe, at the historical site from 2 to 4, I think, if I don't memory serves me correctly. Okay, anything else under new business? I have something, but I want to hear from anybody else from council who might have something. No? Yes, Councillor Beale.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to mention that since our last regular meeting, I've attended a number of meetings on behalf of Council, the Oceanside Health and Wellness Network, the panel on homelessness, which was put on by the Task Force on Homelessness, the Oceanside Task Force on Homelessness, also the Parksville and Qualicum Beach Tourism Association, and also the Vancouver Island Regional Library. And I'd like to just mention a couple of points that have come up in the Vancouver Island Library. And a big one for users is that the library has brought in a new online catalog, the Integrated Library System. And I think, like any new system, there's probably a bit of a learning curve. I did see a presentation on it, and it seemed like it should be fairly user-friendly. But that being said, I have heard of a couple of concerns from some of the Parksville area users, particularly with regard to telephone renewal and also the process for checking on holds with the library. I received these concerns just immediately after the library board meeting, so I wasn't able to bring them up or discuss them at the time. But I do know that any concerns are taken quite seriously by the library board and looked at and responded to. So hopefully that will get worked out. And I think with any change, there are maybe some losses, but also some gains. So some of the advantages will be that it'll be much easier to download e-books, which I think will be great for many people as they get to use this more and more, and also the availability of Hoopla videos, among other things. So just thought I'd mention that. Get out and try out your online library catalog.
Thank you very much. Any further items of new business from members of council? If you'll permit me, council, I think I sent everybody a short email, a very short email last week. You probably noted that the DNA analysis cost is now being downloaded to the municipalities. I just got back from a week away out of town, and I wanted to contact our detachment commander, but I didn't have time to call him today. So I'll give you a further update on that. I'm concerned about that. It's starting off at something like $4,000 or $5,000 a year. Where it's going to go, nobody knows. So we'd better have a look at this, and I'm suggesting, depending on what it looks like and where we're going with it, that we may have an item to bring to AVICC, the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities, and from there perhaps to the Union of British Columbia municipalities. I noticed that the District of Kent has sent a letter to Minister Anton expressing their concerns about this, so we'll have to find out where that's going and what that represents. And what I don't know, and what I will find out, is are there repercussions for us at the RDN level in terms of, because this is the District of Kent, so I'll get that information to sort of try to finally understand what the financial implications over time might be. So before we get into this and all sing and rejoice that we're going to be downloaded upon again, we'll check it out. Okay, yes, Councillor Greer.
Yeah, one more item. I guess we all received an email about the RDN raise in taxes, and it's almost 12% since 2014. And I was wondering how you voted and whether we were informed, and what position did you put us in?
Gee, I'm glad you asked the question, because that's something that slipped my mind. You'll notice on page 2 of what Mr. Butterworth sent out, there's a fairly extensive report on where costs are going up. Costs are going up because there was a time when the use of the Ravensong Pool and the Oceanside Place was done by assessment. Now, up to 50%, we're working our way towards 50% to be done by utilization. And the big utilization in Ravensong and Oceanside Place is the cities of Parksville and the town of Qualicum Beach. So there's an increase there. The administrative costs, which have been demonstrated to me to be legitimate by the RDN, are going up. The transit is going up, and there's always a great demand for more transit. I receive more demands for transit, more and more, so that's going up. They're getting 50 new, 25. The fleet will now be all liquid natural gas fueled, which will eventually decrease costs from what we're paying now. But those transit costs, in terms of expanded transit service, they're going up, and our contribution to things like the sewer treatment plant at French Creek, which serves us all, is also going up. Although some of those costs will be covered by the DCCs. So pretty much the costs are legitimate. They're all costs that we're using. There's nothing there that's pie in the sky. There's nothing relatively new. It's all costs that are expanding. Now, when you translate that into dollars, for the $100,000 home, I don't think there's too many $100,000 homes, but it's $10 a year. For the $200,000 home, it's $20 a year. For the $300,000 home, it's $30 a year. And for the $400,000 a year, I think it's $41 a year. So it just is what it is. Those costs are I've looked at them. As you said, did I vote against anything? No, because the costs that were brought forward were legitimate. Now, that budget has not been finalized. We'll be going back and looking at other things and seeing if and where we can cut back, but that looks like where it's going to end up. Go ahead.
Like the PCC building, the swimming pool and the arena are heavily subsidized, I think, for well over $1 million or more. I don't know whether Fred's got that number or not. I think at one time you told me it was slightly over $1 million. It's probably above that now. But I'm wondering whether the RDN board keeps the rec commission accountable for maybe increasing wage rentals there and so on.
The last discussion we had about rental rates for Oceanside and Ravensong was that there's a point where you get which would defeat the purpose of getting revenue for that, because if you raise it too high, people won't go, they won't pay the cost. And they seem to figure that they're at that level now in terms of the kinds of reports that we've been getting. That discussion has been held around the board table in terms of, hey, let's raise the cost, let's get more revenue. But and the other thing I wanted to point out too is that we're all part of the regional parks and trail system, and there's almost, although the expenses are, I consider their expenses to be quite reasonable and down to earth, but those expenses are slowly creeping up too, and we participate in that. For example, there's a new trail going out of Springwood Park that's going to go to the Coombs Country Market, and we contribute a little bit towards that in our overall contribution to the RDN, but it's going to be very, very beneficial for citizens of Parksville. Thank you. Okay, so we're finished under new business, and we're going to be moving on to, I need a mover and a seconder pursuant to Section 91C of the Community Charter. Council proceed to a closed meeting to consider items related to labor relations. I need a mover and a seconder. Mover by Councillor Greer, seconded by Councillor Beal. All those in favor? Thank you. We are going in camera. We'll take a 5-minute break. Jeez. I should have brought my list. I knew you were going to bring that up. I knew you were going to bring that up.